The human exploration ship Aurora drifted quietly through the dark reaches of space. Its silver hull reflected the faint light of distant stars, and its engines hummed with steady rhythm. The crew of 50 men and women had grown used to the silence of deep space, but silence often meant danger. Anything unknown could appear beyond the scanners, and every crew member was trained to respond quickly. Among them was Ryan, a young mechanic who worked in the engine bay. He was not a soldier, not a leader, and not even someone who enjoyed attention. He preferred the quiet corners of the ship, surrounded by tools and wires. While others talked about glory and discovery, Ryan found comfort in fixing things. To him, space was not about conquest but about keeping the ship alive. On this day, the scanners of Aurora picked up something strange. An object floated near an asteroid field, half hidden by drifting rocks. The signal was faint, but it was clear that it was not natural. It had structure, broken pieces of metal, and traces of energy. Captain Mara stood at the front of the bridge, her eyes sharp. "We have a distress signal," she announced. "It is weak, but it is there. Prepare a small team to investigate." Ryan did not expect to be part of that team. He usually stayed behind when the crew went out on missions, but the chief engineer pointed at him. "Ryan, you know the conduits better than anyone. If their systems are damaged, we will need you." So, against his own quiet wishes, Ryan found himself inside a small shuttle with 4 others. The shuttle left Aurora and moved toward the broken vessel. As they drew closer, the shape of the ship became clear. It was large, larger than Aurora, but torn apart. Its once proud hull was scarred with burns and holes, as if it had faced heavy fire. Broken panels floated nearby, and a faint glow pulsed from within. The shuttle docked with difficulty, its magnetic clamps holding against the damaged airlock. Ryan followed the others inside, his steps slow, his eyes scanning every detail. The corridors of the alien ship were tall and curved, unlike human design. Symbols ran along the walls, glowing faintly in blue light. The air was heavy, with the smell of burnt metal and smoke. At first, it seemed empty. The team moved carefully, their flashlights cutting through the shadows. Then, faint sounds reached their ears. Voices. Weak, but filled with urgency. They entered a wide chamber where survivors huddled together. Tall figures stood in armor, their shapes strong and proud even in weakness. The armor was unlike anything Ryan had ever seen, smooth and curved like living metal. In the center of the group was someone different. She was tall like the others, but her armor shone with delicate patterns of silver and blue. Her helmet was removed, revealing a face both stern and graceful. Her eyes, bright and steady, looked directly at the humans. Her bearing was calm even in the chaos, and the armored guards around her stood as if protecting something precious. One of the human officers stepped forward. "We are here to help," he said slowly, raising his hands to show peace. "We can bring you to safety." The alien guards exchanged looks, their weapons held close. But the woman in the center raised her hand, and they obeyed. She spoke in a language the humans did not know, her voice clear yet unfamiliar. The translation device on the officer's wrist tried to process the words, breaking them into fragments. "Safe, ship, broken, we accept." It was enough. The humans began guiding the survivors toward the shuttle. Ryan, staying close to the back, watched quietly. Yet his eyes were drawn again and again to the woman with the shining chest plate. She moved with dignity even while injured, and her people respected her deeply. As they walked through the corridor, one of the human officers grew curious. His eyes lingered on the silver chest plate that covered the woman's torso. Symbols pulsed faintly across its surface, like veins of light. He reached out as if to touch it, perhaps thinking it was only armor. Before his hand could make contact, the guards blocked his way with sudden force. Their weapons hummed, and their eyes glared with warning. The officer froze, his hands still in the air. Then, for the first time, the woman herself spoke in broken human tongue. Her voice was soft yet firm, her words careful but strong enough to be understood. "Only my husband may touch my chest plate." The corridor went silent. The human officers looked at one another, unsure if they had heard correctly. The translation device repeated the words with certainty, confirming no mistake. The officer who had reached out quickly stepped back, embarrassed. He muttered an apology, though it was unclear if the princess understood. Ryan stood at the back, his eyes wide. He had no idea what the words truly meant in her culture, but he could sense their weight. It was not just armor. It was something sacred, something tied to her very identity. The way the guards had reacted, the way she had spoken, it was clear this was no simple rule. The group continued toward the shuttle, but the silence between humans and aliens grew heavier. Everyone now understood that they were walking with someone important, someone whose customs could not be ignored. When they returned to the shuttle, the survivors entered carefully. The tall guards watched every movement, their weapons never lowered. The woman with the shining chestplate sat quietly near the center, her eyes glancing often at Ryan. For reasons he did not understand, she seemed less guarded around him than the others. As the shuttle left the broken vessel and returned to Aurora, Ryan felt a strange weight in his chest. He had come only to fix systems, yet he was caught in something far greater. He did not know her name, nor why her words seemed directed at more than just the officer. But he knew one thing. This encounter was only the beginning. The shuttle from the broken alien vessel docked with the Aurora smoothly, and the crew rushed to help the survivors. Doctors hurried forward with scanners and stretchers, guiding the injured toward the medical bay. Engineers stood ready to study the alien technology, though the guards made sure no one touched the princess or her armor. Ryan stepped back, letting the officers and doctors take charge. He was not trained for diplomacy, and he did not like being the center of attention. Still, his eyes followed the alien princess as she walked across the docking bay. Her steps were graceful despite the damage to her ship, and her silver-blue chest plate caught the light with every movement. The words she had spoken in the corridor still echoed in Ryan's mind. "Only my husband may touch my chest plate." It was such a strange sentence, yet the weight in her tone had been real. The other crew members whispered about it as well, their voices filled with confusion and curiosity. Captain Mara approached the princess, her calm presence steadying the tense atmosphere. She bowed her head slightly, a sign of respect. "You are safe here," she said, speaking slowly so the translation device could follow. "We will not harm you." The princess nodded, her expression unreadable. She spoke a few words in her own language, and the device translated them in fragments. "We thank, safe." Her guards stood close, their eyes sharp. They seemed ready to strike at any sudden movement. Ryan noticed that whenever one of the human officers drew too near, the guards shifted protectively. Yet when Ryan moved with his toolkit, staying close to the walls, their eyes did not follow him. It was as if they had decided he was no threat. The survivors were led through the corridors of the Aurora, and many crew members turned their heads to watch. Whispers followed the group. Some wondered who the tall armored strangers were, while others debated the meaning of the princess's strange warning. A few even laughed quietly, thinking it was nothing more than an odd superstition. Ryan said nothing. He felt there was more to it. When they reached the central hall, the princess paused. Her eyes wandered across the ship, studying its design and structure. Ryan could see she was curious, though she did not show it with words. Instead, she placed her hand gently on her chest plate, almost as if to remind herself of something important. One of the human officers, a man named Joran, broke the silence. He was bold and often spoke without thinking. "So this is the famous armor, is it?" he said, his voice half playful. "What is so special about it that only a husband may touch?" The guards stiffened immediately, their hands gripping their weapons. The princess's gaze turned sharp, and her voice cut through the air. She spoke slowly, carefully, but her meaning was clear. "No one touches," she said in broken human tongue. "Sacred. Only bond. Husband bond." The hall grew quiet. Captain Mara gave Joran a hard look, and he quickly stepped back, realizing his mistake. The tension eased only slightly, but the warning was heard by all. Ryan stayed at the back, listening closely. He thought about her words. Sacred. Bond. Husband bond. This was not a simple custom. It was something tied deeply to her people's way of life. Later, the survivors were given quarters near the medical bay. The guards refused to let anyone enter without permission, and even the doctors were only allowed inside after strict agreement. The princess rested on a seat made from smooth metal, her armor never removed. Her eyes followed the humans outside, as if measuring their every action. That night, when the corridors grew quiet, Ryan walked alone toward the engine bay. He preferred the company of machines, for they never judged or whispered. Yet as he passed by the quarters of the alien survivors, he saw movement. The princess was standing near the doorway, her tall figure outlined by the soft glow of the corridor lights. She looked directly at him. For a moment, Ryan froze, unsure what to do. Then she spoke, her words broken but clear enough. "You, mechanic." Ryan nodded slowly. "Yes. I fix engines." She studied him in silence, then pointed toward the wall where wires and panels ran. "Good hands," she said simply. Her eyes softened for the first time, though her tone was still serious. Ryan felt a strange warmth in his chest. She had noticed him, not the officers, not the captain, but him. Before he could respond, one of her guards stepped forward, and the moment ended. She returned to her quarters, leaving Ryan with more questions than answers. The next morning, repairs on the alien ship began. The engineers from Aurora worked carefully, but the alien technology was strange and difficult to understand. Some systems hummed with energy that did not match any human design. The guards allowed only limited access, and their eyes watched every move. Ryan was called to help with the power conduits. He crawled into narrow spaces, checking lines and connections, while the others argued about circuits. When he emerged from the conduit, he found the princess standing nearby. She watched him quietly, her gaze steady. Then she spoke again, her words slow and deliberate. "You, respect, armor. Others, not respect. You different." Ryan blinked, unsure how to answer. He simply nodded, his throat dry. The princess touched her chest plate lightly with her hand. "This, life. Not just metal. Bond with heart. Husband bond only." Her guards shifted uneasily as she spoke so openly, but she did not stop. She looked at Ryan as if waiting for him to understand. Ryan's mind raced. He did not know her world, her culture, or her rules. But he knew she was serious. He could see it in her eyes. Her chestplate was not just armor. It was something living, something sacred, something tied to her very being. Before he could reply, Captain Mara called his name, and he was pulled back into work. Yet the words of the princess stayed with him all day. That evening, as he rested in the quiet of the engine bay, Ryan thought about everything. The broken ship, the survivors, the guards, the chest plate, and the strange words of the princess. He did not know why she seemed to notice him more than the others. He did not know why her crystal armor glowed faintly when he was near. But one thing was clear. There was a mystery here, something far beyond simple repairs or cultural customs. And somehow, Ryan was caught in the middle of it. Life aboard the Aurora slowly adjusted to the presence of the alien survivors. The crew was used to meeting strange species, but never before had they sheltered royalty. The alien princess and her guards carried themselves with dignity, and their silence only deepened the mystery. For most of the crew, curiosity grew stronger with every passing day. Whispers spread in the corridors. Some said the chest plate of the princess held great power. Others believed it was only armor, and her words about husbands and bonds were nothing more than superstition. A few even laughed, calling it a story told to frighten outsiders. Ryan did not laugh. He remembered the way her eyes had sharpened when Joran had reached for the chest plate. He remembered the way her guards had moved without hesitation, ready to defend her at all costs. And most of all, he remembered her voice when she had said, "Only my husband may touch my chest plate." To Ryan, there was nothing to laugh about. He could feel that it was sacred, even if he did not fully understand it. The princess kept to her quarters most of the time. She spoke little, but whenever she appeared in the corridors, her presence made people fall silent. The guards always stayed close, yet her eyes often wandered past them, searching the ship as if she was learning its ways. One day, Captain Mara called for a meeting in the observation deck. The wide windows showed the endless stretch of stars, and the alien princess was present with two of her guards. The officers of the Aurora sat at the long table, their faces calm but curious. Captain Mara began slowly. "We welcome you as guests," she said. "We will protect you until your ship can fly again. But we also need to understand your needs. Communication is difficult. Perhaps you can help us learn more of your words." The princess listened carefully. She spoke a few phrases, the translation device catching only fragments. "Grateful, honor, safe with you." Her tone was steady, but the language barrier made it hard to go further. Joran leaned forward with a grin. "And what of the chest plate?" he asked carelessly. "Is it true no one may touch it unless he is your husband?" The guards reacted instantly, their armor shifting as if they were ready to stand. The princess raised her hand, stopping them, but her eyes narrowed. She spoke with firm control, her broken human tongue sharp. "Yes. Sacred. Bond of heart. Not armor only. Husband bond only." The words fell heavy into the room. The officers grew quiet, and even Joran leaned back, his grin fading. Ryan sat near the edge of the meeting, silent as always. He felt the weight of her words more deeply than the others. He could see it in her expression. This was not a small rule of her people. This was a law, a truth, a piece of her soul. After the meeting ended, the princess stood. She turned her gaze across the table, and her eyes paused on Ryan. For a heartbeat, she said nothing. Then she walked away with her guards, leaving the officers whispering once again. Later that day, while Ryan was in the engine bay, he heard a soft voice at the doorway. He turned and saw the princess standing there, her silver chest plate glowing faintly in the dim light. Her guards waited behind her, silent but watchful. "You fix ship," she said slowly. "Yes," Ryan replied, wiping grease from his hands. "I fix engines. I fix power. That is my work." She stepped closer, her gaze steady. "Your ship's strong. Not like ours. You care for it?" Ryan nodded. "I care for the ship. If it breaks, we all fall." Her eyes softened slightly, and she placed her hand over her chest plate. "This also. If it breaks, I fall. It is not just metal. It is life with me. Heart with me." Ryan understood a little more then. The chest plate was not just protection. It was tied to her very being. Maybe it was alive, maybe it was part of her body, or maybe it was something even deeper. Whatever it was sacred. The princess continued, speaking carefully. "Only one may share it. Only one may touch and live. If others try, pain. Death. That is why bond is sacred." Ryan's eyes widened. He realized the danger that Joran had nearly brought upon himself when he had reached out to touch. This was not just culture. It was survival. "You trust me?" Ryan asked softly. The princess tilted her head. "I watch you. You respect. You do not laugh. You listen. That is rare." Ryan felt his face grow warm. He was not used to praise, especially not from someone so noble. Just then, the engine bay shook. A sudden flicker of power rushed through the conduits, and the lights dimmed. Alarms rang softly across the ship. Ryan grabbed his tools and rushed toward the control panels. "Stay back," he warned, but the princess did not move. She watched as he worked, his hands steady as he rerouted energy. Sparks flew, but he did not flinch. The hum of the engine steadied again, and the lights returned to normal. Ryan exhaled in relief. The princess's eyes glowed faintly with respect. "You protect ship. You protect your people." Ryan looked up at her. "That is my duty. Just as you protect yours." For the first time, the princess gave a small nod, as if she recognized something in him. Perhaps it was not strength of battle, but strength of loyalty. That night, whispers spread again through the aurora. Some said the princess looked at Ryan differently. Some wondered if her words about the chestplate were tied to him somehow. Ryan ignored the whispers, but he could not ignore the truth in his heart. She had chosen to speak to him, to trust him, in a way she had not done with anyone else. As the stars drifted silently outside the windows, Ryan sat alone in the engine bay. His hands rested on the cold metal of the ship, but his mind was far away. He thought of the princess, of her chest plate, of the bond she spoke of. He thought of the way her eyes softened when she spoke to him. He did not know what it all meant yet. But he knew one thing. Their worlds were different, their customs divided, yet something was pulling them together. Something neither of them could ignore. The aurora drifted steadily through the starfield, but inside its walls, tension was growing. Repairs on the alien ship were proving difficult. The technology was strange, pulsing with living energy that the human engineers had never seen before. Every time they thought they understood a circuit, it shifted or reacted in ways they could not explain. Captain Mara grew worried. If the survivors' ship could not be repaired, they would remain aboard the Aurora much longer, and the fragile balance between the two groups would be tested. Meanwhile, Ryan spent most of his days in the engine bay, but now his duties had doubled. He was asked to work closely with the engineers who studied the alien vessel. Though he preferred quiet work, he found himself again and again in the presence of the princess and her guards. The princess spoke little, but her eyes always followed him. Sometimes, when the officers argued or raised their voices, her gaze would shift toward Ryan, as if she wanted to see how he reacted. Ryan never shouted, never mocked her culture, never reached for her armor. He only worked with calm hands and steady focus. One evening, the calm routine broke. The Aurora shuddered suddenly as alarms rang through its corridors. Lights flickered, and the low hum of the engines grew uneven. Crew members ran to their stations, their faces tied with worry. Reactor surge, the announcement echoed. Stabilizers failing. Ryan's heart leapt. He grabbed his toolkit and sprinted toward the reactor conduits. Sparks flashed across the walls, and heat pressed against his skin as he crawled into the narrow space. The ship shook violently, and he knew the danger if the surge spread. Both Aurora and the alien survivors would be lost. Behind him, he heard footsteps. Turning slightly, he saw the princess standing at the edge of the corridor, her guards trying to pull her back. But she did not move. Her silver-blue chest plate gleamed faintly in the flashing lights. "You, safe," she called, her voice rising above the alarms. "Stay back," Ryan shouted. "This place is dangerous." "I will fix it." Still, she refused to leave. The guards shifted nervously, torn between obeying her and protecting her. Ryan pushed deeper into the conduit, sweat on his brow. He rerouted energy lines, sparks biting his hands, but he kept working. Suddenly, the ship lurched, and a heavy panel above him loosened. It fell with a crash. The princess moved without hesitation. She stepped forward and raised her arm, her armored shoulder taking the hit of the falling panel before it could crush him. The metal slammed against her chest plate, but she stood firm, shielding Ryan from harm. Ryan froze for a second, stunned. She had put herself in danger for him. "Go," she urged, her voice steady. "Fix." With renewed focus, Ryan continued. His hands moved quickly, rerouting circuits, calming the wild energy. The hum of the reactor began to stabilize, the alarm slowed, and finally the lights returned to normal. The Aurora gave a final shudder and then settled back into steady rhythm. Ryan crawled out of the conduit, breathing hard. His hands were burned, his face covered in sweat. The princess stood over him, the heavy panel lying at her feet. Her guards looked shocked, but they said nothing. "You saved me," Ryan whispered. She tilted her head slightly. "You save ship. I save you. Equal." For the first time, Ryan saw her lips curve into something like a small smile. It was faint, almost hidden, but it was there. The guards led her away, but not before she gave him one more look. It was a look of trust, the kind that could not be spoken with words. Later that night, the crew gathered in the mess hall. Rumors had already spread about what had happened. Some said the princess had risked herself to protect a mechanic. Others whispered that perhaps her strange words about bonds were beginning to show truth. Joran scoffed when he heard. "She did it only because she needs him for the repairs," he said. "Do not believe there is anything more." But others were not so sure. They had seen the way she had stood beside Ryan, how she had shielded him when she could have stayed behind. Ryan, however, stayed silent. He sat in the corner of the mess hall, nursing the burns on his hands. His thoughts were not about rumors but about the moment itself. He had looked into her eyes and seen trust there, real trust. The next day, the princess came to the engine bay again. She walked past the crew and stopped in front of Ryan. Her guards stood behind her, but they did not interrupt. "You hurt?" she said, glancing at his bandaged hands. "It is nothing," Ryan replied. "I have been burned before." She studied him quietly. Then she reached out not to touch him, but to place her hand over her own chest plate. "I see courage. You do not run. You protect. My people respect this." Ryan met her gaze. "And you protected me. You did not have to, but you did." Her voice softened. "Trust is rare. You give it. I give it back." Ryan felt a strange warmth at her words. It was not just respect between strangers. It was something deeper, though neither of them said it aloud. From that day forward, the bond between them grew. The princess continued to keep her distance from most of the crew, but when Ryan entered a room, her gaze often followed him. When he worked on the alien ship, she sometimes stood nearby, watching in silence. The cultural divide remained. Many crew members still whispered, and the guards never fully lowered their weapons. But between Ryan and the princess, something had changed. They were no longer strangers. They were no longer only allies of circumstance. They were two souls who had risked themselves for each other, and in that moment of danger, trust had been born. The Aurora continued its slow journey, carrying both its human crew and the rescued aliens. Repairs on the alien ship were still far from complete, and every day new challenges appeared. The strange living energy that flowed through the alien vessel made even the most skilled engineers shake their heads. But for Ryan, the biggest challenge was not the repairs. It was the princess. Since the reactor incident, she had looked at him differently. When she passed him in the corridors, her eyes stayed on him a moment longer. When he worked, she sometimes stood nearby in silence, her guards watching carefully but never stopping her. And though her words were still broken, he understood her better each time. One evening, Ryan was called to check the stabilizers in the cargo bay. He crouched near a panel, tools spread around him, when he heard footsteps. Turning, he saw her standing there again. The silver-blue chest plate glowed faintly in the dim light. "You alone?" she said softly. "Yes," Ryan replied. "The others are busy. I can fix this myself." She stepped closer, her guards waiting at the door. For a long moment, she was silent, her eyes thoughtful. Then she placed her hand over her chest plate and spoke slowly. "I tell you secret. You listen." Ryan froze. "A secret?" He nodded carefully. "I will listen." She sat across from him, her armor shining as if alive. "This chest plate," she began, her words careful but strong, "not only armor. It is crystal of heart. It grows with me. It breathes with me. Without it, I die." Ryan stared at her, stunned. "It is alive." She nodded. "Yes. It is not metal only. It is bound to blood, bound to soul. When I was born, crystal chose me. From child to now, it grows. It is part of me." Ryan felt a chill. He finally understood why her guards had reacted so fiercely when Joran had reached for it. Touching her chest plate was not like touching armor. It was like touching her life. She continued, her voice lower now. If wrong hand touches, crystal burns. Rejects. Kills. Only one hand may join without pain. Husband hand. Bond hand. Ryan's heart pounded. So when you said only your husband may touch it, you meant, only one person can survive contact with it? Yes, she said firmly. Only one. It is fate. It is law of my people. The room grew heavy with silence. Ryan tried to find words, but none came easily. Then, it is more than marriage. It is life itself. Her eyes softened. Yes. Husband bond is not only name. It is soul bond. Two hearts join with one crystal. That is why it is sacred. Ryan sat back, struggling to take it all in. He had thought it was tradition, a cultural rule, maybe even superstition. But now he saw it was truth, written into her very being. Why tell me this? He asked at last. She looked at him with steady eyes. Because crystal does not reject you. When you near, it is calm. When others near, it warns. I do not know why. But I see. Ryan's breath caught. You mean, it accepts me? She nodded once. Yes. It is strange. You are human, not of my world. Yet crystal is quiet near you. This never happened before. Ryan's mind raced. He was just a mechanic, an ordinary man who fixed engines. How could something sacred to her people accept him, a stranger from another world? Before he could speak again, the cargo bay doors slid open, and Captain Mara entered. The princess rose instantly, her guards stepping forward. The captain's eyes swept across the room, lingering on Ryan and the princess. Everything all right here? Mara asked, her tone calm but curious. Yes, Captain, Ryan said quickly, hiding the weight of what had just been shared. The stabilizers are fine. The captain gave a slow nod. Good. We will need them soon. She glanced at the princess but said no more before leaving. When the door closed, the princess looked back at Ryan. Keep secret, she said quietly. Not for all ears. I promise, Ryan replied. She gave him one last look before turning away, her guards following. That night, Ryan could not sleep. He lay awake in his bunk, staring at the ceiling, his thoughts filled with the image of the glowing chest plate. He remembered her words, only one may touch without pain. Husband hand. Bond hand. He tried to convince himself it was coincidence. Maybe the crystal had not reacted to him because he had never touched it. Maybe she had misunderstood. But deep inside, he knew it was more than that. He remembered the way her eyes had softened when she spoke, the way her voice had lowered as if sharing something sacred. She trusted him with knowledge she had told no one else. The next morning, repairs continued. But now, whenever Ryan looked at the princess, he saw her differently. She was not only a leader, not only a survivor. She was someone bound to a living crystal that carried both life and destiny. And somehow, that crystal had accepted him. Later, when they crossed paths in the corridor, she paused. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she placed her hand gently over her chest plate and gave him the faintest nod. Ryan felt his chest tighten. He nodded back, unable to say the words aloud, but she seemed to understand anyway. From that day forward, their bond was no longer silent. It was hidden, yes, but it was real. The secret of the chest plate now rested between them, tying their lives together in ways neither could yet explain. And though Ryan did not know what the future would bring, he knew this truth: the princess had chosen to trust him with her greatest secret. And that trust was more powerful than any weapon in the galaxy. Days passed aboard the Aurora, and though repairs on the alien vessel continued, progress was slow. The human crew grew restless. Supplies were stretched thin, and the presence of alien royalty made every decision heavier. Still, Captain Mara held the balance with steady leadership, and Ryan worked quietly as always, repairing what he could. But beneath the routine, tension lingered. The secret of the chestplate weighed on Ryan's mind. He had promised to keep it, and he did, but it changed the way he looked at everything. Every time he saw the princess, he remembered her words. Only one hand may touch without pain. Husband bond. The crystal had not rejected him, and that truth unsettled him more than he could admit. Then came the day when silence was broken by alarms. Unknown vessels approaching, the voice of the sensor officer rang through the ship. Multiple signatures. Closing fast. The crew rushed to battle stations. On the bridge, Captain Mara's eyes narrowed as the screen filled with dark shapes sliding out of the void. Sleek warships, marked with symbols that glowed red, moved in formation. Their weapons pulsed with energy, aimed straight at the Aurora. The princess was already there with her guards. At the sight of the fleet, her expression hardened. She spoke quickly in her own language, and the translator caught fragments. Hunters. Enemies. They come for me. Ryan felt a cold weight settle in his chest. These ships were not random pirates. They had come with purpose. They wanted the princess. The first warning shots struck. Energy beams cut across the void, shaking the Aurora as shields flared. Captain Mara ordered evasive maneuvers, but the enemy ships were faster. The Aurora was built for exploration, not war. In the chaos, the princess stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "I fight," she declared in broken human tongue. "I must fight with you." Her guards shifted uneasily, clearly torn. One of them spoke in her language, his tone urgent. The translator flickered. "You cannot fight without bond. Tradition forbids. You need chosen one beside you." The crew around them frowned, confused. Ryan's heart quickened. He knew what they meant. The princess turned, and her gaze found him. Her voice was steady, but it carried weight. "You. Ryan. Will you stand?" The room went silent. Every human officer stared at him. Ryan felt heat rise in his face, his mind racing. He was a mechanic, not a soldier. He fixed conduits, not weapons. He had never led in battle. Yet here she was, asking him to stand at her side. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Because Crystal accepts you," she said. "Because fate chooses. If I fight alone, I break law. My people lose honor. If you stand with me, bond is true. We fight together." Captain Mara stepped closer, her voice calm but firm. "Ryan, this is no small choice. If you agree, you put your life at risk. If you refuse, we may lose her trust, and perhaps her people's trust as well." The ship shook again under enemy fire. Time was running out. Ryan looked at the princess. Her silver-blue chestplate glowed faintly, alive with power. He remembered the moment she shielded him in the reactor conduit, the way she trusted him with her secret, the way she spoke of bonds that joined heart to heart. Slowly, he nodded. "I will stand with you." The princess's eyes softened for just a moment, and then she gave a firm nod. "Then we fight as one." The decision was made. Within minutes, Ryan found himself in auxiliary armor, the closest thing the Aurora could provide. It was heavier than what he was used to, and his movements were stiff. He held a standard human rifle, but his hands felt awkward around it. He had never trained for battle. The princess, however, stood tall in her shining armor. Her chestplate glowed brighter now, as if awakened. Her guards bowed their heads, acknowledging the bond, though their eyes still carried doubt. The battle began in full. The Aurora launched counterfire, beams of energy flashing across the void. But the enemy ships pressed harder, their weapons cutting into shields. Inside the ship, corridors shook as explosions rattled the hull. Ryan followed the princess through the chaos. She moved with grace and precision, her every step purposeful. Her chestplate pulsed with energy, and when enemy boarding parties stormed the halls, she met them with power. Her armor flared, shielding both herself and those near her. At first, Ryan struggled. His aim was clumsy, his hands trembling. But the princess glanced back at him, her voice steady. "Do not fear. Stand crystal with you." Something changed in him then. He steadied his breath, gripped the rifle tighter, and fired with focus. To his surprise, his shots found their mark. He was not a soldier, but he was not helpless either. Side by side, they pushed back the intruders. The princess's armor shielded him more than once, her crystal glowing brighter when he stood near. It was as if the bond gave strength to both of them. Around them, the crew of the Aurora watched in awe. They had never seen the princess fight, nor had they expected Ryan, the quiet mechanic, to stand at her side. Together, they were more than they had been alone. At last, the enemy forces retreated. Their ships, damaged by both human defense and the princess's power, pulled back into the void. The battle was over. The crew cheered weakly, relief flooding the air. But in the quiet that followed, all eyes turned toward Ryan and the princess. She stood tall, her armor still glowing faintly, her eyes fixed on him. "You stood," she said softly. "Crystal accepts. Bond true." Ryan lowered his rifle, his breath heavy. He could not deny it. The crystal had glowed brighter with him near. The enemy had fallen back. And though he was only a mechanic, he had stood by her side when it mattered most. For the first time, he felt what she meant by bond. It was not just words. It was real. The battle had ended, but the Aurora was scarred. Burn marks stretched across the hull, and smoke lingered in several corridors. Still, the ship lived. Its crew lived. And most importantly, the princess and her people were safe. In the hours that followed, repairs began at once. Engineers moved quickly to patch holes, while medics treated the wounded. Ryan worked without rest, his burned hands aching as he carried tools and sealed conduits. He was tired, but he did not stop. He had stood beside the princess in battle. He could not falter now. The princess walked among her guards, speaking to her people in soft tones. They bowed their heads to her, their pride mixed with relief. When her eyes found Ryan across the corridor, she paused. She walked to him, her chestplate glowing faintly, and spoke in her careful human tongue. "You stood. You did not fall. Crystal chose right." Ryan shook his head, wiping sweat from his brow. "I only did what I could. I am no warrior." Her eyes softened. "Warrior is not only sword. Warrior is heart that does not run. You have that." Her words settled deeply in him. He had always thought of himself as small, ordinary, a man of wires and engines. But she spoke as if he carried more than that, as if his worth was something greater than he had ever believed. The following day, Captain Mara called a council in the central chamber. Both human officers and alien survivors gathered around the long table. The atmosphere was heavy but hopeful. "The enemy fleet will not give up," Mara said firmly. "They came for the princess once. They will come again. We need a decision. Do we continue trying to repair their ship, or do we unite our strengths here aboard the Aurora?" The alien guards exchanged glances, but it was the princess who spoke. She stepped forward, her voice calm but filled with authority. "We stand together. Humans saved us. Humans fought with us. We honor this bond. We are not two crews now. We are one." Her guards bowed, accepting her words. The humans nodded in agreement. An alliance had been formed, not from politics or treaties, but from trust and survival. Still, one question remained unspoken in the room, and all eyes turned toward Ryan. They had all seen the crystal glow when he stood beside her. They had all seen the way she looked at him, and the way he looked back. At last, the princess placed her hand over her chest plate. Her eyes stayed on Ryan as she spoke. "Bond is true. Crystal accepts. My people see. Your people see. No denial." The chamber grew silent. Ryan felt every eye upon him, but he focused only on her. He stepped forward, his voice quiet but steady. "I do not know what fate means. I do not know why your crystal accepts me. But I know this: I will not leave your side." The princess gave a slow nod, and for the first time, her lips curved into a clear, true smile. From that moment, the bond between them was no longer secret. Both crews accepted it. The alien survivors bowed in respect, and the human crew offered cautious smiles. It was not an ordinary bond, nor one that followed the traditions of either world. It was something new, something born from the meeting of two hearts in the fire of battle. Days turned into weeks as repairs continued. The alien vessel remained too damaged to fly, so the survivors made their home aboard the Aurora. Slowly, the two groups learned from each other. Humans taught the aliens about human engines, while the aliens shared their knowledge of living crystals and energy flows. Together, they became stronger than either had been alone. Ryan often worked with the princess by his side. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they worked in silence, but always they understood each other. When he struggled with alien circuits, she guided him with patient words. When she grew weary of command, he reminded her she was not alone. One evening, they stood together in the observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly before them, bright and silent. The princess placed her hand over her chest plate, the glow soft in the starlight. "My people believe bond is forever," she said quietly. "When crystal chooses, it never breaks. Do you fear this?" Ryan shook his head. "No, I do not fear it. I fear only failing to protect you." Her eyes met his, steady and warm. "Then we will protect each other. That is bond." Behind them, Captain Mara entered silently, watching for a moment before speaking. "The galaxy is wide," she said. "We may face greater storms than this. But with this alliance, I believe we will endure." The princess gave a respectful nod. "Together, we are stronger." And so the alliance was sealed not by treaty, not by command, but by bond. The humans of the Aurora and the aliens of the crystal chest plates became one crew, one family. Their story spread beyond the stars, whispered in ports and stations as the tale of a mechanic and a princess, bound by fate and trust. Ryan never sought fame, and he never thought of himself as a hero. But when the galaxy spoke of him, they did not call him ordinary. They called him the one who stood when no one else could, the one chosen by the crystal, the one who became the bridge between two worlds. And when the princess walked beside him, her chestplate glowing softly, he knew the truth in his heart. She was no longer just the alien princess. She was his bond. She was his future.